Good morning. I will start with the quote from Maharshi Aurobindo. True knowledge is not attained by thinking. It is what you are and it is what you become. Namaskar, Suswagatam, Shubhaswagatam. Today's guest of honor, respected Shri Anil Gokak, keynote speaker of today's seminar, Honorable Nidanta Sharma, respected Dr. M.S. Shyam Sundar sir, advisor NAAC, esteemed advisors, deputy advisors, assistant advisors, learned NAAC officers, galaxy of intellectuals, my dear friends, and all stakeholders who have joined with us on YouTube. I, Dr. Prashant Parad, deputy advisor NAAC, and I feel privileged and honored to welcome you all for the seminar on Maharshi Aurobindo Ghosh, his life and contribution in the field of education. We will begin our program by lighting the traditional auspicious lamp. I will request all our distinguished guests, along with our Honorable Shyam Sundar sir, to come forward for the ceremony as a tribute to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. Sir, please. असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतमय ओम शांति शांति शांति। नमस्कार प्रभु, मुझे असत्य से सत्य की ओर ले चलो, मुझे अंधकार से प्रकाश की ओर ले चलो, मुझे मृत्यु से अमरता की ओर ले चलो। माँ सरस्वती के सामने दीप जलाकर हमने प्रकाश की ओर राह पकड़ ली है और आज महर्षि अरविंद जी के विचारों से यह राह अधिक प्रभावशाली और दृढ़ होगी, इसमें मुझे कोई शंका नहीं। Do you know the meaning of Bharat? Bharat comprises of two words, Ha and Rat. Ha मीनिंग ऑफ प्रभात, तेज, सूर्य, रथ अविरत करने वाला, अविरत बढ़ने वाला. So भारत का अर्थ है प्रकाश की ओर बढ़ने वाला. So this is a good meaning of Bharat, and we feel proud that we are Bharatiyans. We are celebrating Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav, which is an initiative of Government of India to commemorate 75 years of independence and the glorious history of its people, culture and achievements. This Mahotsav is dedicated to the people of India who have not only been instrumental in bringing India thus far its evolutionary journey, but also hold within them the power and potential to enable Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of activating India 2.0, fueled by the spirit of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The official journey of Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav commenced on 12th March 2021, which started a 75-week countdown to our 75th anniversary of independence and will end post on 15th August 2023. In words of Honorable Prime Minister, the Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav means elixir of energy of independence, elixir of inspiration of warriors of freedom struggles, elixirs of new ideas and pledges, elixir of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and therefore this Mahotsav is a festival of awakening of India, festival of fulfilling the dream of good governance, and the festival of global peace and development. Coincidentally, 15th August is 150th birth anniversary of Maharshi Aurobindo Ghosh. On the occasion of the 150th birth anniversary of Maharshi Aurobindo and 75 years of independence, Ministry of Culture is commemorating the life and philosophy of Sri Aurobindo by undertaking spiritual programs in 75 prisons across the nation between 12th August and 15th August 2022. The purpose of this program is to transform the lives of prison inmates through inculcation of philosophy of Sri Aurobindo and by practicing the yoga and meditation. Here at NAAC, we are inspired to conduct this particular seminar by our honorable respected director sir, and we are also trying to understand the life and philosophy of Sri Aurobindo by undertaking the seminar on Maharshi Aurobindo Ghosh, his life and contribution in the field of education. Sri Aurobindo was one of the most eminent and learned gurus of his times. He was a spiritualist. He was one of India's most respected and renowned ones. Sri Aurobindo, the great educationist of India, has set forth his philosophy in the Life Divine. He bases his philosophy on the original Vedanta of Upanishads. Sri Aurobindo believes that earlier Vedanta represent an integral or balanced view of life. It implies healthy integration of God and the man or world, renunciation and enjoyment, freedom of the soul and action of nature, being and becoming, the one and many, vidya and avidya, knowledge and works, birth and deeds. Let us proceed for this morning's next program. We are pleased to have us with two eminent speakers to enlighten us regarding the life of Aurobindo. Sri Diganta Sarmaji, Sahitya Academy Translation Award in 2020 from Guwahati, and Sri Anil Gokak sir, retired former IAS officer from Bengaluru. It is just like Duddha Sharkara Yoga. Now it's time to felicitate our guests with the flowers and mementos. I would like to request Honorable Respected Shyam Sundar sir to present bouquet, shawl, memento as a token of love to our respected guest of honor, Sri Anil Gokak sir. I will request Anil Gokak sir to accept our welcome. Now I would like to request again Shyam Sundar sir, along with Neena madam, Amrit sir, to honor our keynote speaker, Sri Diganta Sarmaji, with a bouquet shawl gift. Thank you all. With this warm and affectionate felicitation, now I would like to take pride to invite our respected Shyam Sundar sir, Honorable Man, to address this gathering on this beautiful occasion. Shyam Sundar sir, please.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, on behalf of National Assessment Accreditation Council, on behalf of our beloved director, Professor S. Sharma, on behalf of all my colleagues from NAAC, and also on my personal behalf, I would like to welcome both the distinguished dignitaries who are on the dais, both Professor Shri Anil Gokak and Shri Diganta Sharma, and also I take this opportunity to welcome each one of you for this very important, very vibrant, interactive session. Sir, now during the celebration of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we have planned several series of lectures. And yesterday also our chief guest was Chief Justice of High Court of Karnataka, Professor Mr. Azadi was here, and he was speaking about political justice, economic justice, social justice, all these things. He had thrown a lot of light, insights on various dimensions of justice, especially in the wake of 75 years of independence, and we did learn a lot of things from him. And in the same way, today also we had organized this particular talk, and I personally and also on behalf of NAAC, we are very much grateful and thankful to both the speakers who have accepted our invitation to come all the way from their places to Bangalore, and that in a short span of time, here Professor has come from Guwahati and Professor Anil Kumar from Bangalore. Okay. But anyway, he's a senior most officer here, because do you know his age? He's 82 years young. Yeah. Maybe I think there is another coincidence also, because these two dignitaries, even I looked at the names. One is Shri Anil Gokak, who is senior most person in this particular hall. That is one thing. Then another thing is Anil means what? Air. That is Vayudeva. Just like Vayu Bhagavan, he has come from his home to this particular place. That is one coincidence. Another is Diganta Sharma. Diganta means what? Different horizon. Because in that horizon, all the gods and goddesses also stay there only. In that way, we are very much privileged to have both the dignitaries for this particular interactive session. And especially in this particular Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, everybody can contribute. And see, for example, recently we celebrated Har Ghar Tiranga and Ghar Ghar Tiranga. Do you know who has conceived this idea? Anybody? Any guess? See, just one of the youngsters from Hubballi, from Karnataka, one young person, he has conceived this Har Ghar Tiranga, Ghar Ghar Tiranga, because for the last so many years he has been hoisting this flag, and he felt that if everybody hoists the flag in their homes, definitely it would be very colorful and also the celebrity, festivity would be there. Then finally he had written a small note to our beloved Prime Minister, and Prime Minister also acknowledged, and he has accepted this idea of going for Har Ghar Tiranga, Ghar Ghar Tiranga. Then finally it became a reality. In that way, we cannot discount anybody in this particular country, because we have lot of values, lot of ideas, because there is no depth of ideas at all. So the only thing is, if you nurture ideas, if you encourage and if you motivate people, certainly very many things can be done. Sir, especially because yesterday I think I was talking to one of the dignitaries, that he was telling me during the inspection, school inspection, the inspector asked one of the, I think all the students about their parental background, maybe names of their father, their grandfather, great grandfather. Then after great grandfather, nobody was able to tell. Maybe 3 generations only they were able to tell. Then afterwards the inspector asked another question. Do you know Vivekananda? He said yes. Do you know Mahatma Gandhi? Yes. Do you know Chhatrapati Shivaji? They said yes. Then afterwards he asked a very good question. See, even though you are not related to Vivekananda, that is, Vivekananda has lived only for 39 years. That's it. In 39 years, he became a global leader and he is a world famous person. And even though he is not related to any of the students in that school, but still they know about all these icons. But they were not aware of their own parents. Maybe after grandfather they were not able to tell. Maybe I think in this all also, I don't think any one of you can tell after 3 generations. I don't think you can tell your great grandfather, and if you tell 4th generation, definitely I think you are very much privileged, and definitely you need a round of applause by chance if you tell 4th generation people. Then afterwards, then he asked, why you didn't know those names of your great grandparents and all? Then why you are aware of these people? Then one of the girls said, she gave a very good, beautiful explanation. See, all our great grandparents, they live just like others, and they also got married, they also got kids, and they also died. There is nothing great about that. But whereas all these icons, including Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Aurobindo, or Mahatma Gandhi, they lived for others. And also after their death also, each one of them would be remembered very significantly by each one of us. I don't think we can afford to forget any of these icons. In this way, if you can contribute significantly to the society, definitely those people would be remembered. In my personal opinion, each one of us also can contribute. Where there is a will, there is a way. See now, for example, Sri Aurobindo. Yesterday I was reading about Aurobindo. He is a philosopher, he is a yoga guru, and in different dimensions. Anyways, Professor Digat Sharma, who would be giving a lot of information about Aurobindo. But still, he had born in Calcutta and died in Pondicherry, and also as a coincidence, he also had born on 15th August only. I think that is another coincidence, Aurobindo. Then even though he contributed very significantly in different dimensions like journalism, as a philosopher also he has contributed, and as a yoga guru also he has contributed. In addition to all these dimensions, he has contributed very significantly in the field of education also. And sir definitely is going to throw a lot of light on those dimensions. In that way, when one single person can contribute in different dimensions, why not we can contribute in a smaller way at a micro level in at least 1 or 2 dimensions, if not in 10 dimensions, at least 1 or 2 dimensions. For example, sir, I want to give some of the best practices of NAAC also, because recently a couple of people we thought of going for solar lighting. Now NAAC has been considered as a net zero positive building. That means we are generating more electricity than our requirement, and we are pumping additional electricity to our electrical company. That means whatever the power you are seeing now, we are totally self-reliant here. It's a net zero positive building. And also from IGB's Indian Green Building Council, we got platinum rating also just about a week ago. In that way, a couple of officers in NAAC and some of the people we contributed, and we were able to do this. And also we went for solar street lighting, solar heating, then heat pumps, then so many other things. Now recently we got another 5 acres of land also. There also we would be developing our ICT block, and also here we can see a lot of greenery around. Maybe for a government building, this is quite unlikely. Normally government buildings may not have this type of ambience, but this looks like a corporate office. And also you know why it is happening? Because most of the officers are very young, and they are innovative, and we motivate others, and also finally our ambience would be like this. In this way, each one of us can contribute, not only here, because we should not think that only our head of the institution should do, because if you go to university, they may think that only vice chancellor should contribute, I am only assistant professor, associate professor, what I should do. And if they think like that, they are wrong. And if you come to political arena, then MLAs should think that ministers should do, and ministers may think that chief minister should do, then chief minister may think prime minister should contribute. And if we go for a blame game, finally the total contribution would be insignificant. That's why each one of us should own responsibility, and because we should not think that only our beloved Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji should do. No, we would be wrong. Each one of us should act like Narendra Modi ji. Then only we can contribute significantly to this country, and whatever the way Aurobindo contributed to our economy, at least we should learn some lessons, because we may not be able to contribute to his level, but nonetheless, at least we can learn some of the dimensions. Maybe that will give some insights to us, and also we would be slightly motivated also. Anyway, I request both the dignitaries to throw light in a systematic way. In that way, we would be very much enlightened today. In this way, I would like to conclude my talk. Then again, I would be thankful to both the dignitaries for accepting our invitation. Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. Surely we will make some contribution. We will try to have some contribution from every individual. Sir Aurobindo believes that man is the maker of his own destiny, and education is a big tool to achieve that target. He believes that the best thing in man in his spirituality. He was an intellectual who intensely analyzed human and social evolution. According to Sri Aurobindo, the education must emphasize on whole aspect of human life, such as physical, psychic, mental, beauty, power, knowledge, and love. We are very fortunate to have a great literary personality as our guest of honor, Sri Anil Gokak ji, former IAS officer. I feel proud and privileged to introduce respected sir to this august gathering. Here is the brief introduction regarding Anil Gokak sir. Respected Anil Gokak sir got MA degree in economics with a first class from Osmania University, Hyderabad in 1962. Then he joined the Indian Administrative Services in 1964. He served the government of Maharashtra and the government of India for 36 long years from 1964 to year 2002. Under the Maharashtra government, he was collector of Dhule, collector of Thane, the Vice President and Chief Executive Officer of Maharashtra Housing and Area Development Authority and Secretary Forest Department. Under the Government of India, Gokak sir worked as the Cement Controller of India, and then the Managing Director of Food Corporation of India, and later as the Secretary to the Departments of Program Implementation, Telecommunications and Fertilizers. He was instrumental in implementing the policy of liberalization in the telecom sector. It was in his regime that first 7 licenses for the private sector in telecom were issued. The Telecom Regulatory Authority of India was also established as a result of the efforts made by him to get it clear in Parliament. The Indo-Oman fertilizer project, which has brought immense benefit to the Indian economy, was also shaped during his tenure. After his retirement, he held the position of Vice Chancellor of Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning in Puttaparthi. In English, he has written 2 books on administrative issues, Industrial Sickness and Telecommunications in India. Recently, he has published a book titled The Impact of Sri Aurobindo on Professor V.K. Gokak. He has also written a biography in Kannada of his late father, Professor V.K. Gokak, titled Kannada Vishamaya. He functioned as co-convener of Karnataka chapter of Indian National Trust for the Art and Cultural Heritage till recently. Now, I would like to invite Shri Anil Gokak sir to enlighten us.
Respected Digant Vishwas Sharma ji, Professor S.T. Sharma ji, Shri M.S. Shyam Sundar, Dr. Parad, advisors and officials of NAAC, and all others who have assembled here to participate in this function on Shri Aurobindo. At the outset, I apologize for sitting and speaking on Shri Aurobindo, a person whom I revere a lot and about whom I would normally like to talk only in the standing position. But as Tennyson said, though we are not that old, though we are not that young, when in old days we moved earth and heaven, that which can be we are. Professor Shyam Sundar referred to me, Anil, as energy. I have the energy to speak, but I am afraid not the energy to stand. I don't have the additional energy of that to which he made a reference. Be that as it may, let me come to the topic. The topic of today's seminar is Life and Contribution of Sri Aurobindo in Education. So I feel I should say a few words about the life of Sri Aurobindo also, because that has a close bearing on his philosophy of education as well. And I would also like to recapitulate briefly the contribution of Sri Aurobindo to the Indian Renaissance, because that is where we come across the educational philosophy as well. Indian Renaissance saw brilliant stalwarts like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, 1772 to 1833, Dayananda Saraswati, 1824 to 1883, Ramakrishna Paramahams, 1836 to 1856, Vivekananda ji, 1862 to 1902, Tagore, 1861 to 1941, Gandhi, 1869 to 1948, and Sri Aurobindo, 1872 to 1950. All these stalwarts adorn the firmament of Indian Renaissance and made spectacular contribution to the regeneration of India. Sri Aurobindo was more intellectual and philosophical in the sense that he codified his philosophy and wrote a number of books in terms of his philosophy. Therefore, I have read somewhere, and especially in literary circles, that many literary persons in various languages do not know about Sri Aurobindo. But that does not mean that he is unimportant. He is very, very important. And if you ask me, I would say he is one of the most original thinkers of the Indian Renaissance. I will deal with life first, because the title of the seminar itself, Life and Contribution of Sri Aurobindo in Education. His life played an important role in shaping his philosophy. And his life has impacted his concept of education. Aurobindo spent his childhood in England, 1879 to 1893, because his father was completely westernized. He did not want his sons to mingle with Indians. He ensured that his sons went to a convent school in Darjeeling, where Indians did not have much of an access. He returned to India, and he was, as Sri Aurobindo had said in his book called Mahayogi, he was as familiar with everything Western as any accomplished European of his time. He mastered Latin, studied French and English literature. But he was not a blind worshipper of the West. Reasons: his father, though he was fully westernized, he used to send clippings from newspapers to Aurobindo on the atrocities committed by the British in India. That is how the spirit of patriotism in Sri Aurobindo was around. This is one of the main reasons. Then Irish independence was raging, question of Irish independence was raging in those days. So the way the Irish people fought for their independence inspired him. He admired the French Revolution also. What Sri Aurobindo says is that though he developed a liking for England, attachment to European thought and culture, he did not get attached to England as a country. He felt that his heart lay somewhere else, and that was India. Now this excessive reaction, because later on he wrote very strongly about Indian culture, Indian literature and all that. This strong reaction, some of the critics say, was due to the excessive love of everything British and European in an environment that was forced on Sri Aurobindo. So that led to the other extreme later on. Of course, I don't say that he hated the British or anything like that, but he was quite strong and vocal in his defense of Indian culture and civilization. Another reason was Christianity was the only religion and the Bible the only scripture he knew in his young age. And he was not particularly impressed by the history of Christianity, the persecution of the Middle Ages and the narrowness of the developments that took place thereafter. He came to Baroda and spent 13 years there, 1893 to 1906, joined the Baroda State Service. He held administrative positions. Later on, that is where his link with education begins. He was made a vice principal of the Baroda College by the Maharaja and later on promoted as the principal. He had, even after coming to Baroda, a huge library, and the leading bookstores in Bombay had standing instructions to acquaint him with the latest books on the subjects that he was interested in. And Upanishads and Gita particularly fascinated him. He was exposed to them somewhat in England itself. Patriotism was burning in his heart when he was in Baroda. It was already there, it became stronger. And therefore, he started writing articles in Hindu Prakash supporting the radicals as against the conservatives. He wanted quick independence for India. He wrote a book, a document, it is not signed by him, but authored by him. And the Rowlatt Committee, appointed by the British government, described it as a very, very revolutionary document. Bhavani Mandir, Bhavani, Goddess Bhavani, is the mother of strength. She is Mother India. She has manifested herself in recent times, that was then, when Aurobindo was young, as Shakti. She is seen in the form of large empires in Europe and even in a small country like Japan, which defeated a huge country like Russia. She got inspired by Japan. Mother India is said is weak. All the sons of Mother India have to make us strong. And we have to pray in the name of Bhavani, the goddess. All youngsters have to take to Brahmacharya and serve Bhavani Mandir for a certain period of time. They may get married after the service is over. That's a different story. He got acquainted with yoga in Baroda, and Paramahamsa and Vivekananda had already impacted him. In 1905, the partition of Bengal upset the whole country, particularly the youth of Bengal. He left Baroda. After that, he had maintained links with Bengal and Maharashtra through secret societies. He was a very radical fighter in his younger days. He resigned the post of the principal of the Baroda College on the establishment of the National College in Calcutta. And in his address, in his farewell address, because he resigned from that post also, he exhorted the youth to serve India. And he said, you sympathize not with me, but with the cause I am fighting for. That was the advice he gave. At that time, Bengal was under a fiery spell for two reasons. One, partition of Bengal I have already mentioned. First, a Maharashtrian who was domiciled in Bengal, called Mr. Devuskar. He wrote a book in Bengali called Deshar Kahani. It elaborated the details of economic, political and social exploitation of the British, of India by the British. He had also written a biography of Shivaji, who incidentally was a worshipper of Bhavani, the goddess Aurobindo adored. All this had a tremendous impact on Sri Aurobindo and the young generation. And he took to journalism to propagate his views on freedom. Vande Mataram initially and then Karma Yogi. It was through the columns of Karma Yogi that he emphasized that all life is the Karma Yoga. Dharma is the mantra if we live our lives in the spirit of the Gita. The guiding principle was rooted in religion. The guiding principle of the paper, periodical, was rooted in religion. But the content had to be political because of obvious reasons. So here we see the fusion of politics and spirituality, which is a very important characteristic of India's freedom movement. Incidentally, the word Swaraj is important. We all know it. But it was Devuskar who first used that word, Swaraj. Later on, Dadabhai Naoroji used that word as the equivalent of colonial self-government. But it was Sri Aurobindo who used that word for the first time in the context of full and complete liberation of India. That is a very important aspect which is not known to many. Aurobindo, later on, he has narrated his experiences in prison. He was arrested, you know that, in the Alipur bombing case. Karakahini, he has narrated his experiences in jail. And three important factors stand out in this wonderful narration. I have read the English translation, it is simply moving. He says that God ordained imprisonment for me. Why? He was too busy with political activities earlier. And so he could not concentrate on the self within. God said, I have brought you here to teach you what you could not learn by yourself. And he gave it. He says that, Aurobindo says, God gave him an ashram. And that ashram was none other than the prison itself. The second important factor was, he experienced brotherhood and love among all the fellow prisoners who came from all strata of society. His meeting with them made him feel that the same Lord resides in one and all. And his educational theory is based on this premise. Earlier, his affection was confined to a certain section of society, but love of animals and birds was not known to him. It was in the jail, when luckily he got some opening and he could see some scenes in the open, that he saw animals, birds, and developed the love for them. And lastly, the equanimity of the prisoners, their spiritual outlook. Though most of them were innocents, wrongly persecuted, they maintained their calm. There was no bitterness in them. They were friendly to British prison officials as well. What does Aurobindo say? That this sattvic temperament is the greatest asset of India. And he doubts whether, in comparison with the counterparts of Indian criminals who were there in the prison, so-called criminals, with the counterparts in British, he wondered whether the lower order of criminals in Britain would show the same balance, equanimity and spiritual outlook. He says that the spontaneous love of God is natural and unique only to India. Left Calcutta in 1910 because of he got the hint that he would be arrested and went to Pondicherry. I would say that Sri Aurobindo was the forerunner of Gandhi insofar as boycott, Swadeshi and passive resistance are concerned, though he differed with him on the questions of violence. What he said was, if you do not resist at the right moment, the rank and file may lose their spirit and enthusiasm. So the nature of the resistance depends on the nature of the pressure. That was his philosophy. Of course, he did not believe in indiscriminate violence. I don't want to elaborate on that. And he says that if we do not rebel at the right moment, we would be deserving a rebuke as serious as that given by Lord Krishna participate in the civil war. Pondicherry, he went there, he wrote a number of books, you know that. He published Arya, which initially published most of the important books he wrote, serially. And what did he tell Paul Richard, the husband of the mother? He said that he wanted to write down in terms of the intellect all that he had observed and come to know while practicing yoga. That was the objective of the Arya. The ninth divine gives the roadmap for the divinization of the human race. He has graded the various layers of human consciousness from the ordinary mind to the supermind. I don't want to go into all those details now. But this is a scientific, psychological and scientific analysis giving the roadmap for the divinization of humanity. The human cycle and the ideal of human unity deal with collective life of man and give a spiritual explanation, interpretation of the concepts of liberty, equality and fraternity. Again, I don't want to go into details. He wrote letters on yoga and art and poetry. These letters are as important as the letters of John Keats in English literature in terms of their impact on the followers. He revealed the treasures of the Vedas and Upanishads symbolically, reinterpreted them rationally, and showed how hollow the criticism of the Western was. I now come to the educational theory of Sri Aurobindo. Before I come to the educational theory of Sri Aurobindo, I would like to say something on what had happened on the educational front in the days prior to the Indian Renaissance. You know that we had a glorious system and it got into disuse after the foreign invasions. The British tried to play a clever strategy. Macaulay, he said, you introduce youngsters, young India, because they wanted to create a captive force for running their empire. What Macaulay said was, you introduce them to English education and you will get people who are Indians by birth, but English in taste, in opinion, in morals and in intellect. He felt that exposure to English British education would shape the faith of youngsters in their religion. Some Christian missionaries, please don't mistake me, I have known a number of Christian missionaries who have done outstanding work, but I quote from official record only. They were of the view that if you expose youngsters to British education without religion, with science and things like that, it would suffice if education in science and English arouses suspicion amongst the youngsters against their own religion. That's sufficient. They have achieved their own purpose. So these two schools of thought were there. But both these schools of thought came to naught because of the work done by Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Dayananda Saraswati. They never expected this, and so the consequences which they expected did not materialize. Later on, curious thing happened. British, as a matter of policy, were not inclined towards religious education in schools. They wanted religious neutrality. So, on the one hand, there was no moral instruction of any kind. On the other hand, the exposure to science certainly it created some doubts among youngsters. So the original touch with spirituality was somewhat lost. So the Britishers themselves realized that there was moral loss without any moral gain. And youngsters were getting astray. The government of the great British administration got worried, and in 1913 decided that religious instruction may be imparted in schools. Even British missionaries supported that education in Hinduism may be given, otherwise the consequences will be too bad. But what happened was, after this policy resolution, the discretion was left to private institutions, and they started having courses in their own way without the universal element in the curriculum. That is where the tragedy arose, and even now I think we have yet to recover fully from that tragedy. Indian Renaissance, heralded by Rajaram Mohan Roy, Dayananda Saraswati, the first two stalwarts concentrated on social reform, not that they neglected education. Rajaram Mohan Roy himself started a number of educational institutions, but they also took an active part in social reforms. Mahatma Gandhi no doubt had a scheme of education, but his scheme of education was based on truth. Ramaraj, and he wanted to produce a satyagrahis through his system of education for the attainment of Ramaraj. Tagore conceived the whole universe to be a small nest, and he advocated the use of fine arts to promote human values, because he said that fine arts will enable you to realize that the smaller art and the infinite art are one. Sri Vivekananda also said that education should tap the divine spark within the human being and enable him to realize its full potential. Where does the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo stand in terms of education? Now, his educational writings are interspersed in various articles. Karma Yogin. First is the national system of education, and then we have the national value of art. He has essays on the human mind, the powers of the mind, the moral nature, the training of the senses, etc. in Karma Yoga. I will deal with only the important facets and then close my talk. He stressed the need for a national system of education in post-independent India. And he said, the mere change in nomenclature, you add the word national before a board, you add the word national before a college or school, you don't achieve a national system of education. You need a qualitative change, not a mere change in nomenclature. Because if a person stays in the old system continue, the purpose will be defeated. It is a difficult job. He said we should not be chauvinistic, unduly patriotic, and pre-reform, a mere reversion to the old system, which may have been great and effective at a particular point of time. We have to take into account the needs of the present and the increasing needs of the future as well. Nor can we afford to take the American, German and British system as it is. You may take it, color it with some Indian, give it an Indian touch, and you may feel that you have achieved what you wanted. No, that is not the case. We may insist on a closer study of the past in our curriculum. Fine, fair enough. But the needs of the present day, science and knowledge cannot be ignored. We have the evolved models that is suited to the Indian soul, need and temperament, and in order to do that, we have to go to fundamentals. He says that the mind of man, we have to assimilate the Western knowledge, but also mold it according to our own plans and aspirations. The idea that one size fits all does not hold good, because each nation has its own soul. He said that there is the individual soul, there is the nation soul, and the universal soul. He said that the individual soul can expand, but it can't expand rapidly enough to become one with the universal soul. An intermediate stage is necessary, and that is provided by the nation soul. The system of education should be such that it enables the individual to identify his own soul with the soul of the nation and also with the soul of the universe, the soul of humanity, without any friction. That is the kind of education which promotes breadth of outlook, which results in expansion of consciousness that we are required to evolve. Underlying all this philosophy is the unique concept of man, which our ancestors developed. Victor Hugo said, man is a hyphen between a beast and an angel. Someone else said that man, M means Maya, removed, A is Atma, attained, Atma, realized, and N is Nirvana, attained. This is our closer to the Indian children. Sri Aurobindo viewed the individual and the manifestation of the universal divine. And he said that all matter, the universal soul, spirit, enters all matter, then enables it to attain its potentialities and then reveals the divinity that lies hidden within it. Each nation has its dharma, and the system of education has to cater to each and individual dharma, of the nation. His education is divided into, I don't say division, but there are 4 stages of the system of education he conceived. Physical, vital, mental, and then psychic and spiritual. What is meant by physical education? The body has to be the fittest receptacle for the divine ray. It has to be made fit. But the basis for the spiritual is the physical. The senses rely for their accuracy on the unobstructed carrying of message by the nerves. It is the nerves who feed the senses. So the nerves have to be unobstructed. They have to ensure the unobstructed flow of information to the senses. And for that, Nadi Shuddhi is the first requirement. Nadi Shuddhi by regulation of breath. This is how another exercises. He said that such exercises should be given to students, including mountaineering, etc. He goes that far. Now let us come to vital education. Vital education enables a child to distinguish between right and wrong emotions. It will ensure that the the child does not succumb to the temptations of the base and the vulgar. The child is simply rendered incapable of doing that because of psychic and vital education. And this is what is called as chitta shuddhi. The mind has to be purified. Mind has to be purified. And when the mind is purified, it will automatically reject all that is base and vulgar. The child should be automatically, naturally learn to develop harmony in thought, word and deed by selecting the right path. Now we come to mental education. What did he mean by mental education? He found that the modern system of education was too much loaded in favor of information. And he said that without the physical body and brain having been developed to that extent, just forcing information on the mind is of no use. The brain can absorb only a certain quantity of information. Before that, the body and the brain have to be made ready. What is important is the transformation of the individual. Should not feed him with information, but transform him. How is knowledge best acquired? He said only when the student acquires knowledge and learns how to forget it and recollect it at the right time, that is the true test of mental education. There is the storehouse of memory inside and the active memory on the upper layers. The active memory should be strong enough, dynamic enough to cull out from the storehouse of memory all that is required for a given moment. Memory, excessive memory, use of memory, importance to that, to apply to day-to-day knowledge, application in day-to-day life, it is not like. Psychic and spiritual development, it shows something more. It takes you to the spiritual level. Psyche and the soul, they are closely interrelated. The psychic element in man enables enables the real man within him to assert himself and rule the whole empire within. It opens you to cosmic consciousness and also exposes you to that which is transcendental and superconscious. He said that moral and religious education, here texts are no use, dogmas are no use. What we have to teach should come spontaneously from the teacher, and the teacher should not impart knowledge. He should tell him where knowledge lies and how to acquire it. And emphasis was on transformation. Education should lead from that which is to that which is. He said that art, fine arts, have a role to play in purifying education in our minds, purifying our minds. And he said that the role of fine arts in education is neglected. So he said that painting, for example, when he enables you to paint it with a sense for the symmetry, form, accuracy in line, etc. It helps you in developing an aesthetic sense. That which is decent, beautiful and good. That is how you develop. And the elaboration, the Indian concept of beauty said that the Indian concept of beauty regards beauty Shyama Sundara. We do not take excessive emphasis on form. Love also, the element of love is also there. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I should now detain any longer. Please pardon me if I have tortured you on account of time overrun. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving valuable insights about life and contribution in education by Sri Aurobindo. Thank you, sir. Now we have a break of 5 minutes, a tea break. But immediately after that, all of us has to assemble here because we have to have a speaker who has given more than 300 speeches on the life of Aurobindo. That is the speech by Sri So just have a break of 5 minutes. After tea break, we get to the Thank you very much. Hello, welcome back. I request all the NAAC officials, staff to assemble in the conference hall. We start the second session now. Shri Aurobindo says, if education is to bring out to full advantage all that is in the individual child, we should first guarantee a safe custody of all that is in individual. Nothing is to be lost or damaged, twisted or crushed. Everyone has in him something divine, something his own, a chance of perfection and strength in however small a sphere which God offers him to take or refuse. Today we have with us Shri Diganta Sharmaji, Sahitya Academy Translation Awardee 2020, a Bengaluru translator and intellectual, and the keynote speaker with us. I feel proud and privileged to introduce a respected sir. Shri Diganta Sharma, son of noted poet, lyricist and translator, late Kailash Sharma. He is a Sahitya Academy Translation Awardee and devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo. He took his M.Com degree from Guwahati University with first class in accountancy and passed LLB from Government Law College Guwahati. He was elected to the post of General Secretary of Guwahati Commerce College Students Union in 1986. He was actively associated with the art of debate in science since his early school life, and Shri Sarma has been successful debater of yesteryears and won many prizes. He is one amongst the few debaters from Assam who have so far won prizes in both Eastern as well as in National Inter-University Youth Festivals. He joined government service as a district transport officer after having qualified in combined competitive examination conducted by the Assam Public Service Commission, but resigned subsequently on 1st January 2012 to pursue a different life in the light of teaching of Sri Aurobindo, Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. He has so far translated and published 7 numbers of books. Some of the famous titles are Secularism, Rashtroddhar Anya Naam, Bharatiya Sanskruti Bhaktisi, Karma Yogi, Rata Navajanama. He has already delivered a total 100 lectures during the period with effect from 5th December 2020 to 25th December 2021 on the foundation of Indian cultures in the light of Sri Aurobindo, as a part of year-long 150 hours lecture series being organized by Center for Studies in Human Development, Assam University, Silchar, Assam. He is now delivering lectures as a part of another online series consisting of 150 lectures on understanding the universal message of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the light of Sri Aurobindo, being organized by Center of Studies in Human Development, Assam University, Silchar, as a key and sole speaker from facilitator for the entire year. Now he is parallelly delivering online lectures as an expert faculty member in year-long course entitled Gita for Life in the Light of Sri Aurobindo, consisting 150 lectures commenced with effect from 21st February 2022, being organized by Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. In the year 2021, he has translated the book, The Bharatiya Sanskruti Vitti, originally authored by Sri Aurobindo, is conferred with prestigious Sahitya Academic Translation Prize 2020 Assamese. He is at present acting as one of the members of Executive Council, Guwahati University. I am very happy to invite Sri Dr. Sharmaji to enlighten all our audience.
Namaskar. Respected M.S. Sundarji at Vaisarna, respected Anil Gokak, retired officer, Indian Administrative Service, respected Prasant Praharji, the Deputy at Vaisarna, and yes, team cultured souls present here. First, there is a clarification. Neither am I a scholar, nor do I possess any scholarship. Then why this audacity on my part? I have a sense of offering anything and everything at the lotus feet of the Supreme Divine Mother, and this is the sole source of my strength and audacity. So here we are to deliberate upon life and life of Sri Aurobindo in the field of education. His life is a vast life. What Sri Aurobindo himself said one biographer attempted to write on me and express his wish before him, then Sri Aurobindo said, "No one can write on me. No one can write on me." Why? Because he says, "My life has not been on the surface for man to see." Yet, biographers are attempted, and already Anil Gokak has given us a glimpse of his life. So I will focus certain aspect of his life, basically first his political life and then his spiritual life, and then I will move on to his contribution in his education. First, let us begin with the passage from Sri Aurobindo's writing. In fact, it was his message, Independence Day message, broadcast by Krishnapoli radio center on the eve of our independence, that is on 14th August 1947. Maharshi says in that Independence Day message, August 15th is the birthday of free India. It marks for her the end of an old era, the beginning of a new age. But it has a significance not only for us, but for Asia and the whole world. For it signifies the entry into the community of nations of a new power with untold potentialities, which has a great part to play in determining the political, social, cultural and spiritual future of humanity. To me personally, it must necessarily be gratifying that this day, which was notable only for me, because it was my own birthday, celebrated annually by those who have accepted my gospel of life, should have equaled this vast significance. As a mystic, I take this identification not as a coincidence or fortuitous accident, but as a sanction and seal of divine power which guides my steps on the world with which I began life. Indeed, almost all the world movements which I hope to see fulfilled in my lifetime, though at that time they looked like impossible dreams, I can observe on this day either approaching fruition or initiated or on the way to their achievement. So now let me quote his counsel, Barrister Chittaranjan Das. In fact, it was his last submission in defense of Sri Aurobindo in connection with his Alipur Ball case. What he said, and it was almost a prophetic statement. It came to his mouth spontaneously, because at that time Mahotsav was not Mahotsav. He was just a revolutionary, and Barrister Chittaranjan Das was not a prophet. So Siaga's defense of Sri Aurobindo in the session board spanned across 8 days. And he concluded with an impassioned appeal. And what was that appeal? To the court, Chittaranjan Das says, "My appeal to you, dear board, is that a man like this, who is being charged with the offences imputed to him, stands not only before the bar of this high court, bar in this court, but stands before the bar of the high court of history, and my appeal to you is this, that long after this controversy is hushed in silence, long after this turmoil, this agitation ceases, long after he is dead and gone, he will be looked
he will be looked upon as the poet of patriotism, as the prophet of nationalism, and the lover of humanity. Long after he is dead and gone, his words will be echoed and re-echoed, not only in India, but across distant seas and lands. Therefore, I say that the man in his position is not only standing before the bar of this court, but before the bar of High Court of history. The time has come for you, sir, to consider your judgment, and for you, addressing the whole gathering, gentlemen, to consider your verdict. So who was Sri Aurobindo? The poet of patriotism, prophet of nationalism, and the lover of humanity. So, what did he do as a political worker? He was the pioneer and vanguard of the Swadeshi movement. He was the pioneer of the revolutionary movement in India. So, that's a quick glimpse on his political life. And my presentation would be a sort of compilation from his words directly, and it will not be with my own interior interpretation. He was the Sri Aurobindo, as Anil has already mentioned. He was the pioneer and vanguard who demanded first absolute Swaraj for India. He was the first to demand absolute Swaraj for India. But what is absolute Swaraj? What is absolute Swaraj? But what is absolute Swaraj? Let me define in his own words. He says, in 23rd April 1907, 23rd April 1907, before Congress took Purna Swaraj resolution in Lahore Congress, decades after. So, he said in 1907, 23rd April, the Congress has contented itself with demanding self-government as it exists in the colonies. We of the new school would not reach our ideal one inch lower than the absolute Swaraj. And what is that absolute Swaraj? Self-government as it exists in the United Kingdoms. Self-government as it exists in the United Kingdom. So he was the pioneer of the Swadeshi movement, vanguard of the revolutionary movement in India, and he who demanded first absolute Swaraj for India. So, what was the core of his political campaign? What was the core ideas of his political campaign? In his own words, he says there are four subjects which usually form the subject matter of a nationalist speech. Four subjects. What are those four subjects? First one is first Swadeshi. Second, boycott. Third, Swaraj. And fourth, national education. Fourth was national education. So Swadeshi is the method. The way, the road by which the nation advances. Boycott is only the other side of Swadeshi, and both the Swadeshi and the boycott movements are actually encouraged in principle in the greater part of this country. National education is the training of the mind and heart of the younger generation. And then what was the goal? Swaraj is the goal of our national life. Swaraj was the goal of our national life. So then, what is the Swaraj? Then what is the concept of Swaraj? Is Swaraj only mere self-government? Maharshi defines. I have told you that Swadeshi and boycott are the road. Swadeshi and boycott are the road, the way which leads to the goal. And what was the goal? Swadeshi and boycott are the way to the goal of Swaraj. Swadeshi and boycott are the way to the goal of Swaraj. There has been much discussion about the definition of Swaraj. Swaraj has been defined as self-government. It has been defined by Dadabhai Noraji as self-governing colony. What was then Swaraj for him? In our view, self-government is merely one aspect of Swaraj. Self-government is merely one aspect of Swaraj. Then what is the other aspect? Maharshi says, when we speak of Swaraj, we mean the principle of national life. We mean the principle of national life, independent of any form of government. Independent form of any government. This is the political concept. National life. Swaraj means national life, not merely self-government. But there is a spiritual meaning too. There is a spiritual meaning too. The word Swaraj is not a new word, but as old one. It is as old as literature and civilization. The meaning of Swaraj in our ancient literature is the spiritual condition of the soul which attains to mukti. When the soul is independent of everything but itself, when it exists in the joy of its life and greatness, when it is mukta, that is Swaraj. So Swaraj for us is not merely self-government, but for us Swaraj means national life and condition of our soul. And then, lastly, what was the core of his political life? What was the main sides of his political life? He himself said he had three sides of his political life. And what are those three sides? The first, there was the action. So, I have already said that he was the pioneer, Bengaluru and the Bengaluru of the revolutionary movement in India. He was the pioneer. He was the Bengaluru. And first, so, three sides of his political life. So, first one is, there was the action with which he started. And what was that? A secret revolutionary propaganda. A secret revolutionary propaganda. For what? Secret revolutionary propaganda and organization of which the central object was the preparation of an armed insurrection. So that was his first side of his political life, as the anchor of the Swadeshi movement, as the pioneer of the revolutionary movement in India. So, and what was the second side of his political life? Secondly, there was a public propaganda. There was a public propaganda intended to convert the whole nation to the ideal of independence, which was regarded at that time by the vast majority of Indians as unpractical and impossible and almost ancient chimera. Still, it was his second side of his political life, propaganda. First was a secret revolutionary war. And what was the third side? Thirdly, there was the organization of the people to carry on a public and united opposition and undermining of the foreign rule through an increasing non-cooperation and passive resistance. So Gandhi took the idea of non-cooperation from his doctrine of passive resistance. And that is why Guru addressed him as the voice incarnation of the nation's soul. Swadesh Atma ki Bani Mukti, Swadesh Attar Bani Mukti, Swadesh Atma ki Bani Mukti, voice incarnation of the nation's soul. voice incarnation of the nation's soul. And finally, there is a birthday message from Shyama Mukherjee in 1949. It's a concise letter, it's a concise message, but in my opinion, a very comprehensive one in sense and significance from none other than Shyama Mukherjee. Among the Indian politicians, in my opinion, Shyama Mukherjee only understood Sri Aurobindo in its proper spirit. So, let me quote Shyama Mukherjee. And it was written on 13th August 1949, and Maharshi took Samadhi in the year 1950. Written on 13th August 1949, definitely a letter supposed to be sent to Pondicherry. So, Shyama Mukherjee writes, "It is a happy augury that the anniversary of our independence coincides with the anniversary of Sri Aurobindo's birthday. He embodies in a peculiar sense. So for Rabindranath Tagore, he was the voice incarnation of the nation's soul. For Shyama Prasad, he was the embodiment of the creative and ever-resurgent soul of India. He was the embodiment of the creative and ever-resurgent soul of India. For Rabindranath, he was the voice incarnation of nation's soul. For Chittaranjan Das, he was the poet of patriotism, prophet of nationalism, and the lover of humanity." So he writes, he embodies in a peculiar sense the creative and ever-resurgent soul of India. He is no cloistered recluse, for from his spiritual retreat, he remains in continuous communion with the major social and political forces of the world. We have no doubt attained our political independence, but we have yet to regain our spiritual heritage. At a time when moral, squalor, and spiritual degeneration, hatred, greed seem ready to bring us down, the light of Pondicherry flows with a steady sign, a beacon to India as to the world at large. And that is why Maharshi letter says, all life is yoga. Yoga is not to escape from life, but yoga. All life is yoga, all life is yoga. So now on his spiritual life. Because as Maharshi himself said, that no one can write on me because my life has not been on the surface for men to see. So how is one fry like me, how I can attempt to talk about his spiritual life? So I have to take help from Mother's writing. What Mother has said on Sri Aurobindo. Mother met Sri Aurobindo for the first time on 29th March 1914. 29th March 1914, and on the very next day, she wrote in her diary. So, this is from her diary after seeing Sri Aurobindo. What she wrote. Mother wrote, "It matters little that there are thousands of beings plunged in the densest ignorance. He whom we saw yesterday is on earth. He whom we saw yesterday is on earth. His presence is enough to prove. That a day will come when darkness shall be transformed into light, and thy reign shall be indeed established upon earth." Then what Sri Aurobindo represents in world history? A beautiful answer from the mother. And perhaps nobody would write except mother like this. So what does Sri Aurobindo represents in the world history? Mother says, what Sri Aurobindo represents in the world history is not a teaching. It's not a teaching, not even any relation. Then what it is? It is not teaching, not even any relation. Then what it is? It is a decisive action. It is a decisive action direct from the Supreme. It is a decisive action direct from the Supreme. And why he came to earth? Mother says, he has come to beat the earth. He has come to beat the earth to prepare for its luminous future. For its luminous future. Sri Aurobindo has brought to the world the assurance of a divine future. Assurance of a divine future. Sri Aurobindo has come on earth not to bring a teaching or a creed in competition with previous creed or teachings, but to show the way, to overpass the past, and to open completely the route towards an imminent and inevitable future. Sri Aurobindo does not belong to the past. Sri Aurobindo does not belong to the past, nor to the history. Sri Aurobindo is the future. Sri Aurobindo is the future, advancing towards its realization. So this is all about his spiritual life. Now let me move on to his educational contribution. But before I move on to his educational contribution, let me discuss something from the writings of Professor Leslie Joshi. Many of you may perhaps heard about him. He was an IAS officer of 1954 batch. He continued in service only for 2 years. He resigned and joined Pondicherry Sri Aurobindo Ashram. But in 1972, by then Prime Minister, he was again forced to take charge of the Special Secretary Education Department in 1972, even after resignation. And till his passing away, he was the many you may know or may not know. He was the spirit behind this new education policy 2020 initiated by our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, Kirit Joshi was his educational advisor for 10 long years. Though he was residing in Pondicherry, he was the educational advisor to the Chief Minister of Gujarat. So now you can guess from where Honorable Prime Minister has got his vision on education. So first, a clarification from his writing, from late Professor Kirit Joshi's writing. And his writings are actually nothing but expansion of Sri Aurobindo's idea only. So he says, there is at present a need to clarify the meaning and aim of education. Just as it is necessary to clarify the meaning and aim of yoga. Why? We are celebrating since 2015 International Day of Yoga. We are doing asanas and pranayams. Still, Kirit Joshi says, just as it is necessary to clarify the meaning and aim of yoga. Because yoga is now almost 10% identified only with Hatha with asana and pranayamas. But asana and pranayamas are only 2 means of 1,000 means. 2 means among 1,000 means. And that is why Maharshi says all life is yoga. Yoga is not a therapeutic science. Though yoga can cure many diseases, yoga is not a discipline to keep our health in a good condition, then what is yoga? In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna asks Arjuna, the yogi bhava Arjuna, hey Arjuna, yogi bhava. Definitely then asana and pranayama was not referred to. So Kirituji says, just as it is necessary to clarify the meaning and aim of yoga. Why? Because yoga is often identified exclusively with the hatha yoga, and thus its true psychological nature remains quite vague. True psychological nature. So hatha yoga is one of the yogas, one of the means of yogas. But we have Jnana Yoga, we have Karma Yoga, we have Bhakti Yoga, we have Tantric Yoga. So Azadi, even Raja Yoga has accepted only 25% from Asana and Pranayama. In Ashtanga Yoga, only 2/3 is constituted by Asana and Pranayama. 6 are not related to Asana and Pranayama. So Yoga is not to be identified only with Hatha Yoga. All life is yoga. So all life is yoga. Then Kirituji says, why? Why it's a psychological process? Because what is yoga? Yoga is a methodized effort. A methodized effort towards perfection. First condition. Methodized effort towards perfection. Second, but how? What is the way? Methodized effort towards perfection. But what is the process? Process is the expression of the latent potentialities. So process is the expression of the latent potentiality within us. And what is highest condition of victory in that effort? What is the highest condition? To perfection is goal. But what is the highest goal? A union of the human individual with the universal and transcendental existence. So, a union, goal is perfection. And what is the way? Way is the expression of the potentialities latent within us. Expression of potentialities latent within us. Then, Kirituji says, similarly, education is often identified with vocational training. Education is often identified with vocational training or with some kind of mental culture. Education, vocational training. As if education has no other good, only we are to satisfy the corporates. We are born to be great servant. We are born to be great slave. But I am not prepared to serve multinational. I myself want to be another multinational. I want to be a job creator. I do not want to be a job beggar. I want to be a job aspirant. And that potentiality is within me. That potentiality is within me. I am not ready to be a job beggar. Because I am not born to be a beggar. I am born to be a king. But fortunately or unfortunately, because this is the age of commercialism, we are being guided by three super rulers: the opulent plutocrat, the successful mammoth capitalist, and the organizer of industries. Maharshi says, these three are the supermen of this commercial age. But Maharshi has said that they are the occult rulers, not the foreign rulers, but they are the occult rulers. The opulent plutocrat, the successful mammoth capitalist, and the organizer of industries. But I am not prepared to serve them. I want to be another job creator. I want to be another multinational. Because I am not born to be a beggar. So, and its fundamental nature of integral psychological process remains quite clear. So what is education? An integral psychological process. It remains quite vague because it is nowadays only identified with vocational training. So it is a very important, because you may ask me questions after the end of my lecture about the pedagogical aspect. So here Kirituji This is the right view of yoga and education. Right view of yoga and education. We find education and yoga are one and identical process. Not similar. He has used the word identical. Yoga and India's vision of education are one and identical. Not even similar. It's identical process. So then, before moving on to Maharishi's philosophy on education, what is present education? What do you mean by education today? It consists of three aspects. First one is acquiring knowledge. As we acquire money from outside, we are to acquire knowledge from outside. We are to acquire knowledge from outside. This is the first aspect. We are to acquire knowledge from textbook. We are to acquire knowledge from libraries. We are to acquire knowledge from lectures, etc., etc. So acquiring of knowledge is the first aspect of the present education system. And the second, getting introduced to tangible objects. This is the sense of the writing of one of Sri Aurobindo's greatest disciple, Nolinikanta Buddha. I have taken this idea from his writings. And the third aspect is gaining mastery over certain subjects. This is all about education. Acquiring knowledge, getting introduced to tangible objects, and third one is mastery over subjects. In rare cases, very, very rare cases, not understood by everybody, in very rare cases, that education signifies cultivation of faculties also. But it's a very rare, very rare. Basically, education, our higher education, lower education, primary education, all is concerned about acquiring knowledge, getting introduction to tangible objects, and mastery of our subject. But what we need first? Man is a conscious being. How a conscious being can be awakened by unconscious subject? In education process, first we need what? Nolinda says, first we need man. Man is the primary element of education. Man, not the subject. Man. So what we need first is man. The man who has realized in his heart of hearts. What he has realized in his heart of hearts? The throb of life. The throb of life, the source of strength. When we have realized throb of life, and when we have realized our strength within, then we will not serve multinational. Then we will be job creator like Jamshedji. So it is not difficult for such a man to be well equipped to answer any mission of life. For such men means who have realized throb of his life, throb of life in the heart of his heart, and who has realized his strength within. For him it is not difficult to survive in this world. So, why this education is, we have said there's acquiring of knowledge, mastery of our subjects, getting introduced to tangible objects, definitely part of education, but not the whole of education. What I am saying, these are part of education, but not the whole of education. Why? Because it ignores man. Because it ignores life. And Nolinda speaks three things specifically. He says in the first place, such an education ignores the learner. Ignores the learner. Second, it does not try to establish any simple and natural relationship with the learner. No relationship with the learner. Ignoring the learner first, then second, no relation with the learner. And third, it does not allow him to realize deeply and firmly his inner life pulse. He is only asked, you are to gain mastery over certain subjects. then he will be called civilized. So now Maharshi some general utterances on education, few utterances, and it is from his book Human Cycle. Why modern man value education at all? Why we value? Maharshi says he values education for its utility. For its utility. What type of utility? In fitting a man for success. In fitting a man for success in where? In a socialized industrial existence. Otherwise, we would not have given value to the education. Because all our world, education is guided by the instrumental value of education, not by the intrinsic value of education. Education is not initiated for the sake of education. Education is initiated for vocation. Education is being treated as vocational training. So it is what is called instrumental value of education. So he values education for its utility in fitting a man for success in a socialized industrial existence. And why we value science? For its knowledge? No. Why we value science? The science for the useful invention and knowledge, the compose, the conveniences, but machinery of production with which it earns it. It's power for organization, regulation, stimulus to production. Not for any scientific knowledge. We value science, we worship science for these purposes only. And then his first vision, education. Actually, Aurobindo's vision is nothing but India's vision of education, presented in a very modern way, presented in the modern perspective. So then Maharshi says there are two things. The moreover, although man has not yet really heard and understand the message of his sages. And what was the message of the sages? And modern world has accepted the message of the thinkers. Modern world has rejected the sages. And what was the message of the sages? And what was the message of the thinker? Thinker says, educate thyself. What is wrong in it? It seems there is nothing wrong in it. But then it is the message of the thinker, not the sages. And what is wrong in it? Educate thyself. It's a very good thing. But sages says, know thyself. Know thyself. Atmanam. Know thyself. So this is the difference. So modern world has accepted the message of the thinkers and rejected sages. Rejected India's age-old eternal message, Atmanam Vidhi, know thyself. So modern India has to decide whether education should be educating yourself or knowing yourself, knowing oneself. And then Maharshi says that the first principle of the teaching is that nothing can be taught. Nothing can be taught. And Vivekananda goes one step further. You will be rather antagonized if I quote Vivekananda. Vivekananda says, teachers points everything, not something. Vivekananda says, teachers points everything by thinking that he is teaching. Then who is teaching us? While introducing me, Prasanji has mentioned that I am a postgraduate of accountancy. I was a RTO. Definitely, I was taught accountancy in my college by my esteemed teachers. But who now is teaching me all these things? So modern educational pedagogy has to answer who taught Ekalalpo. Ekalalpo was refused by his Guru Dronacharya. Yet he became a great answer rather greater than Arjuna. Modern educational pedagogy has vanished. And that is why Bharat Vivekananda says, teacher spoils everything by thinking that he is this. And Maharshi says, nothing can be taught. Nothing can be taught. Then already Anil Gokak has already mentioned, before we moving on to his philosophy of education, we have to understand what we know by nation. What we know by nation first. The concept of nation. First concept of man, then concept of nation, and then concept of humanity. So three things we have to know first before moving on to his philosophy of education. We have to first know the concept of man. So India has seen always in man the individual, a soul, and what is soul? A portion of the divinity. A portion of the divinity enwrapped in mind and body. Enwrapped in mind and body, a conscious manifestation in nature. A conscious manifestation in nature of the universal self and spirit. So, this is the first concept we have to understand. This is in fact the India's concept of man. India's concept of man. Who is man? So man, India has always seen in man the individual as soul. And what is soul? A portion of the divinity and in mind and body. And what is soul? A conscious manifestation of his divine. A living power of the eternal truth. Gita says, who are we? Mama eva amsha sanatana. My portion eternal. Krishna says, my portion eternal. So this is the first concept we have to understand. Then what is nation for India? So, and similarly, India has not understood by the nation or people an organized state. An armed and efficient community well prepared for the struggle of life and putting all at the service of the national ego. Then what is nation for India? So, but a great communal soul and life. So, as we are individual soul, nation is just the collective soul. So nation is soul, a manifestation of the eternal truth. Not just the name of the inhabitants. So it's also a collective soul, it's nation soul. So by nation, we mean a soul, just it is a collective soul. Just we are individual soul, and as individual soul, we are part of that eternal truth. And nation is also a power of that eternal truth. Just individual is individual soul, we are collective soul. And then what is humanity? Then what is humanity? Then what is humanity? Humanity also must be in accordance with her ancient vision of the universal self. Gokak has already mentioned that universal soul manifesting in the human race. So there is an individual soul, there is a nation soul. In between universal soul and collective soul, in between there is a nation soul. And soul is nothing but conscious manifestation of the divine and a living power of the eternal truth. So this is very fundamental thing we have to understand before moving on to his spiritual, his educational philosophy. So why this education is different from our institutions? Just as Nolita says, first is it ignores the psychology of man. It ignores the psychology of man. Second, it loads the mind laboriously with numerous little packets of information. Third, and what is the consequence? By the method used in this loading process, what we do? Very dangerous thing. Maharshi says, damages or atrophies. What atrophies and what damages? The faculties and instruments by which man assimilate, create and grows in intellect, manhood and energy. So So what a dangerous thing he has said. He has said that it loads the mind laboriously with numerous little packets of information. And by the process what we do, and by the methods used in this loading process, damages or atrophies the faculties and instruments by which man assimilate, create, and grows in intellect, manhood, and energy. So what is the agenda of education? Growth of intellect, growth of manhood, and the growth of energy. Growth of energy. So another vital defect, he says, because he was also his life a strong advocate of national education. He says, it shared with the old system the defect of ignoring the psychology of the race. So first psychology of the individual, then psychology of the race. Psychology of the race. But he cautions here, the mere inclusion of the matter of Indian thought and culture in the field of knowledge does not make a system education Indian. So India's vision has to be incorporated. Vision of man, vision of passion, vision of humanity, and above all, the India's own pedagogical process. India's own pedagogical process. So then what is the first necessity? What is the first necessity? The first necessity for the building of a great intellectual superstructure, what we first need to provide a foundation strong enough to bear. Here we need a strong foundation. For building up a great intellectual superstructure, we need foundation. But what is the meaning of that foundation? What is the meaning of that foundation? Those systems of education which start from an insufficient knowledge of man, when think they have provided a satisfactory foundation. By what? When they have supplied the student with a large or well-equipped mass of information on the various subjects, then they think that we have built up the foundation. If we could give the loads of information, then we think that the foundation is built up. But then Maharshi says here, but the error here is fundamental. Information cannot be the foundation of intelligence. Information cannot be the foundation of intelligence. It can only be part of the material. It can only be the part of the material out of which knower builds knowledge, the starting point, the nucleus of fresh discovery and enlarged creation. But information cannot be the foundation of intelligence. Then what he says here, a very, very revealing statement. Perhaps you will be surprised. She says, an education that confines itself to imparting knowledge is no education. Confining only to knowledge, confining only to imparting knowledge is no education. And he says, information is not the foundations of intelligence. So then, what do we need? The various faculties of memory, judgment, imagination, perception, reasoning, which build the edifice of thought and knowledge for the knower, must not only be equipped with their feet and sufficient tools and materials, but trained to bring fresh material and use more skillfully those of which they are in possession. So they have to be trained to discover fresh material. And then precise meaning of that foundation. What do you mean by the foundation for building intellectual superstructure? What does it mean? And the foundation of the structure, they have to build means this memory, judgment, imagination, perception, reasoning, etc. They have to build the foundation. And what is that foundation? And the foundation of the structure they have to build can only be the provision of a fund of force and energy. So building foundation means provisioning for provisioning for force and energy. But then Maharishi asks one question: where is that energy to be found? Where is that energy to be found? This is the book, 4 small articles, Brain of India. He has described everything, so this is a separate subject fit for separate treatment. But he has outlined the source of that. Just I give you only one answer. All answer lies in the practice of Brahmacharya. But what is the Brahmacharya? Brahmacharya is not about something moral and odd. But what is that? Here he asks a very prominent question. Say, what was the secret of that gigantic intellectuality, spirituality, and superhuman moral force which we see pulsating in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, in the ancient philosophy, in the supreme poetry, art, sculpture, and architecture of India? So energy is to be found. So the name of the very title of this 4 article is the Brain of India. So if I get another occasion, then I can discuss. But I have just mentioned. So Maharishi has asked the question and also given the answer. So where is that energy to be found? So energy to be found is the Brain of India. Then I am coming close to great definition of education. To great definition of education given by Maharishi. It's a comprehensive definition. So Maharishi says the comprehensive definition. But the acquiring of various kinds of information is only one. And not the seek of the means and necessities of education. Then what is the central aim? What is the central aim of education? He says its central aim is the building of the powers. Its central aim is the building of the powers of the human mind and spirit. Building of the human mind and spirit. Then he says it is information. It is information. Rather, as I would prefer to view it, that the evoking of knowledge and will, not the acquiring of knowledge. There is a vast fundamental difference between acquiring of knowledge and evoking of knowledge. So as I would prefer to view it, the evoking of knowledge and will and of the power. And why we are to evoke that knowledge? Why? He gives the answer: to use knowledge, to use character and culture, then at least if no more. So it's a comprehensive definition. But how it will be effected, it is a pedagogical question. A separate subject fit for separate treatment. So it is not easy. I have all the works with me, but in 1 hour, 2 hours, it's not possible. So he says but the acquiring of various kinds of information is only one, and not the seek of the means and necessities of education. Its central aim is the building of the powers of the human mind and spirit. It is the formation, as I prefer to view it, the evoking of knowledge and will and of the power to use knowledge, character and culture. So evoking of knowledge, power and will. This is the central aim. And why we are to evoke? We are to evoke to use knowledge, character and culture. So information is not the central purpose. It's not the central purpose, but only one aspect, not the central purpose. Then let me give the next comprehensive definition. So So, in this definition, he has given his all ideas. National education, universal education, everything. It's a very comprehensive. And for those inquisitive listeners, they can refer to his a preface to national education and a system of national education, where he says it is from his a preface on national education. I think there can be no great dispute that there are three things which have to be taken into account. Three things in a true and living education. Three things in a true and living education. What are those three things? First one is the man, the individual, in his commonness, in his uniqueness. Man. First element is man. The second, the nation. Second is the nation, all people. And the third one is universal humanity. So these are the three things. Three things. Three things which have to be taken into account in a true and living education. Not the subject. Subjects are secondary. Evoking of knowledge. So then he says it follows that alone will be a true and living education. But which helps to bring out to full advantage. Which helps to bring out to full advantage, number one. Number two, makes ready for the full purpose and scope of human life. So these are the two agendas. Makes ready for the full purpose and scope of human life. Full purpose and scope of human life. Number one. And number two, to bring out to full advantage. But what? He says all that is in the individual man. Whatever is within. Power, perfection, strength, energy, knowledge, whatever is in individual being. This is education. And to bringing out to full advantage, and actually if I get time I will tell you the very original meaning of the word education is bringing out. You just say the very meaning of the word education he is bringing out. And Plato says remembrance. Remembrance of what? Remembrance of what already we have within us. So it alone will be a true and living education which helps to bring out to full advantage, makes ready for the full purpose and scope of human life that is in the individual man. So for man, this is the purpose. Whatever is within us, it has to be brought out. We have to be made ready for the full scope of life, because we can become Brahman also. We are not born to be slave. We are born here to become Brahman. First, we are Nara, then we have to be transformed into Narayana. The Nara, then we have to be transformed into Narottam. Then we have to be transformed into Narayana. This is our journey. Professor Prabhuji utters that Pasatu Masam Domayo, Tomusu Mazukil Domayo, Mriturma Amritam Domayo. What is the sense of this program? First, we are born with Nara. We have to be Narottam. Then we have to become Narayana. So education has to prepare us. The second one is nations, concerning nation. And then he says, and which at the same time helps him in what respect? Helps him to enter into his right relation with the life, mind and soul of the people to which he belongs. So nation. He takes care of everything. And then he says, and with that great total life, mind and soul of humanity. Why? He has given the logic. Why we are to learn the right relationship that is to establish with the great life, mind and soul of humanity? Because he himself is a unit of that humanity. and his nation is also an indivisible part of that humanity. This is the truth. So this is another great example of a great definition of education. And now I just quickly mention his 8 philosophy of education, just single line, because I am not going to explain. So how we can summarize his idea, his vision of education? It can be summarized into 8 principles. Though he himself had given 3 principles of education, but here we will be outlining 8 principles of his educational vision. What are those? First one is that nothing can be taught, knowledge is within, knowledge is to be evoked. But how it is to be evoked? The answer is here in Brain of India. It's another occasion. If I get chance, then I shall deliver it. But so first principle is nothing can be taught, knowledge is within, knowledge is to be evoked. So knowledge is to be acquired, knowledge is not to be acquired from outside, knowledge is to be acquired from inside. So education is not an outside-inside process. Education is basically an inside-outside process. Vivekananda says education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. Not acquiring of knowledge, but manifestation. Education is manifestation. So second principle is, what is the second principle? Second principle is that mind has to be consulted. Mind has to be consulted. And what is the meaning of sense of mind has to be consulted? The sense is Swabhava and Swadharma. Swabhava and Swadharma of individual as well as nation has to be taken into consideration. So this is the second principle we can summarize. And what is the third? Third principle is to work from the near to the far. To work from the near to the far. What is its sense? The basis of a man's nature is almost always in addition to his soul's past, his heredity, his surroundings, his nationality, his country, the soil from which he draws sustenance, the air which he breathes, the sights, sounds, habits to which he is accustomed. So we must not take up the nature by the roots. So Maharshi says, first, so education should start from the near, then to the far. First, we have to become national, then we have to become universal. First, we have to become individual, then we have to become national, then we have to become universal. So to work from the near to the far, this is these 3 things. And then 4 principles. Education has to be national, but not parochial and sectarian. It has to be national, but not to be parochial and sectarian. But what is national education? It's a separate subject. Separate subject fit for separate treatment. And then what is the 5th principle? We can summarize. 5th principle is focus to be changed. Focus to be changed to the adequate building up of the faculties of knowledge. From what? From furnishing of knowledge. So focus should be building up of faculties of knowledge. So we have to change the focus of our educational effort from the furnishing of knowledge to the adequate building up of the faculties of knowledge and strengthening of the moral fabric of the student. So this is 5th. And what is the 6th? 6th principle we can summarize. 6th principle we can summarize that ethical aesthetic nature too has to be developed. Ethical and aesthetic nature. Not only mental, but ethical and aesthetical nature. Because Sattam Shivam Sundaram. So ethical, aesthetical nature has to be developed. But we are surely not referring to any conventional moral training by the teacher. But what is, according to him, moral education is a separate subject fit for separate treatment. So, then the 7th principle. What is the 7th principle? This is the most important. Most important. Because we have to become Narayan. This is the ultimate goal. This is the ultimate goal. So, Maharshi says, we cannot stop. Actually, it is said by Gokak Mukherjee, one of his great disciples again, that we cannot stop at the borders of ordinary humanity with all its basic insufficient and limitations. So, what is the purpose? The children should be made ready to develop into divine nature. So children should be made ready to divine nature. Why? Maharshi, here one observation from Maharshi. Because modern education has failed to transform individuals. So we have to seek alternative. Maharshi says, it has not been found in experience. Whatever might have once been hope, what is that education and intellectual training by itself can change man. It only provides the human individual and collective ego with better information and a more efficient machinery for its self-affirmation, but leaves it the same unsensed human ego. So we are to move beyond intellectuality. And here, regarding one thing, let me one very important, because it is very important element, the seventh principle. So why the education of soul? As Anil has mentioned, the education of soul and psychic being and spiritual. What is psychic being is nothing but our inner own individual soul, popularly known as soul, individual soul. Maharshi says, it is not yet realized what this soul is. What this soul is. We are talking of India's vision of education, and it is from his Human Cycle book. From the book is entitled The Human Cycle. It is not yet realized what this soul is, or that the true secret, whether with child or man, is to help him to find his deeper self, the real psychic entity within. But man has not yet realized. Then she says that if we ever give it a chance to come forward, it makes that soul, that psychic entity. If we ever give it a chance to come forward, and still more, if we call it into the foreground, as the leader of the mass set in our front, will itself take up most of the business of education out of our hand. If souls comes into front, then soul will take most of the business out of our hand. So this is seventh principle, and the third principle is, and the eighth is the growth of consciousness, is the object of education. Growth of consciousness. So this is the eighth. And now let me summarize the whole vision of India, the vision of educational vision of India. It can be put into three elements. And this is also the vision of Maharshi Aurobindo. Plus the psychic education and the growth of consciousness. So what are those three elements? If we are asked, what is India's vision of education? We must have an answer like a plus B whole square formula. What is India's vision of education? It can be answered in three steps. So, Professor Kirit Joshi says, first element, education means a rapid psychological process towards perfection. Education is a search for knowledge. Education is a search for values. First aspect. As suggested by Professor Kirit Joshi. And number two, it is also an uncovering of the layers of faculties. Cultivation of them and perfection of them. This is second. And third, it is a process of discovery of the self, just as I mentioned about the soul, psychic entity. So it is a process of the discovery of the self and aims at a true self-knowledge, which gives liberation from ego and imperfection. So what is called Savidya Vimuktai. And the last one is education is a search for that knowledge which should fulfill oneself individually and as a harmonious member of the universe. But this is also the meaning of the yoga. So all these aims are also the aims of the yoga. But this can be put into three things. If we are asked what is India's educational vision, it is not about mastering of subject, it is not about introduction to tangible object, it is not about acquiring knowledge. Then what it is? First element is a methodized organization of life towards its fulfillment. First insight to India's education. A methodized organization of life towards its fulfillment. First aspect. And second aspect, integral knowledge. Integral knowledge. Why it is called integral knowledge? Because it consists of two parts. Upanishad says Paravidya and the Aparavidya. Gita says Khara and Akshara. Khara and Akshara. So Hetra and Tetragramma. And Vivekananda always speaks about grand unification of education, knowledge. So second part is integral knowledge, and integral knowledge means importance of intellect, exploration and realization of superconsciousness. If we put in easy words, if we have to put in very easy words, integral knowledge means self-knowledge, knowledge about the supreme truth, self-knowledge and the world knowledge. It can also be put in other words. Integral knowledge means science of matter, science of consciousness. Integral knowledge means Aparavidya plus Paravidya. Integral knowledge means science and the matter. So science of consciousness, science of matter. So science of matter is the Aparavidya, science of consciousness is the Paravidya. So India's educational insight is integral knowledge. But at present, we are focusing only on one-sided knowledge. Knowledge of matter, knowledge of world, knowledge of science. But we need both Paravidya and the Aparavidya. And what is the third aspect of India's educational vision? It is the human potentialities and pursuit of individual and collective perfectivity. So potentialities and perfection. So these are the three agendas. A methodized organization of life towards its fulfillment. Second is integral knowledge. Integral knowledge means self-knowledge, knowledge of the supreme truth, ultimate truth, and the knowledge of the world like chemistry, physics, political science, economy, etc., etc. In the language of Upanishad, Paravidya plus Aparavidya. Knowledge of science, knowledge of matter, knowledge of consciousness, knowledge of soul. And what is the third thing? The third aspect is the process. It is the pedagogy. And what is that? This is the expression of the latent potentialities within and the manifestation of the perfection already we have. And with these three elements, you can aid the psychic education plus growth of consciousness. Then you will get the whole philosophy of Sri Aurobindo. And later mother has expanded this idea and formulated her integral education. And integral education is consisting of 5 parts. First one is education of mind, education of body, education of vital means education of prana, and then education of psychic being, and then spiritual education. So these are the 5 things. So with this, I am concluding. So it's a long subject because life and the philosophy of is education. So it's not easy to summarize within 30 or 45 minutes. So my thanks and gratitude to all of you, and namaskar.
enlightening us and giving valuable insight regarding the life of Maharshi Aurobindo and his contribution to the field of education. Now the session is open for question and answer. If anybody has any question and answer, they can raise it.
Just one input I would like to.
Yes.
We talked about the Swarajya was the first time, quoted by Aurobindo.
Absolute Swaraj, absolute Swaraj,
Yeah,
absolute
I
Swaraj.
remember.
Demanded absolute Swaraj.
Yeah, but as I come from Maharashtra, and I find that Lokmanya Tilakji has given a clarion call to nation that time की स्वराज्य माझा जन्मसिद्ध हक्क आहे आणि मी तो मिळवणारच. And in his articles about Swarajya, he has also demanded for full Swarajya. So can you throw some light on that?
Just Maharshi has spoken this in a political perspective. Because he actually uttered these words because in 1906 Congress session, the resolution for Swaraj was accepted. But the next year session at Surat, Congress has modified that resolution. And after modification of that resolution, Sri Aurobindo wrote in his Vande Mataram that by Swaraj we mean this. By Swaraj we mean self-government as exists in British. By Swaraj we mean self-government that exists in United Kingdom, and he wrote it on 23rd April 1907 by using the word absolute Swaraj. So it is in the political perspective, and this date is, I do not know when Tilakji has stated this thing. Yes, but it is rather philosophical. So when Swaraj is by birth right, it is rather a philosophical. It is rather enthusiastic and philosophical. But Maharshi has almost spelled it out in a political term. And he has said that Swaraj means self-government, but self-government of what type? Self-government as it exists in United Kingdom. But Congress has contended with the self-government as it exists in the colonies of the British. So it is in that perspective, and he has specifically used the word in his English text, absolute Swaraj. The word is absolute Swaraj, and it is just after Surat Odivation, a Surat Congress session. And both were comrades. Actually, both were closest friends. Tilak and both in 1900 in Surat Odivation. Actually, both were fighting to keep the earlier resolution intact, but they both failed. And from the Surat Odivation, Sri Aurobindo disassociated himself from the Congress. In the Bengaluru session, it was adopted. But later Congress clarified that Swaraj means self-government as it exists in colonies. Then Sri Aurobindo wrote in his Vande Mataram, no, by Swaraj we mean absolute Swaraj that exists in United Kingdom.
Another question?
Sir, in 1907 when Congress session was split, our old textbooks suggest that by choosing to reside with Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Sri Aurobindo Ghosh and Lala Lajpat Rai became radicals.
if you go through this book, you will get many these ideas, because it cannot be completed, or rather even glimpse of that pedagogy cannot be presented within 30 minutes or 5 minutes.
Because in NAAC we are interested in that.
Yes, so you have the organized internal setup, because philosophy of education is one thing and pedagogy is one thing. Pedagogy is one thing. So and I have at least 10 to 15 works. These works all are done by Kirichusi. Kirichusi has done many things. How global consciousness can be affected, how mental education can be affected, and even in a small book you will find many things. That is to say, it refers to national education and a system of national education. You will get many things. It's a very relevant question, but within 5 minutes or 10 minutes, though I have given a lot of hints, that knowledge is to be evoked from inside, provisioning for fund of power and energy. But where we will get that energy and power? It is all there within. But how it is to be brought out? So if you go through the entire process of our yogic process, so because Kirichusi is saying the education and yoga are not only similar but identical. Aims, pedagogy, everything. And one thing I said, in India's pedagogical aspect, there are 3 things. Normally, educational system does not take that into consideration. First element is Sravana. Sravana has to be followed by Manana. Manana means reflection. And Manana has again to be followed by Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana means deep meditation. So listening, so lecturing is only one part. Sravana. So here Sravana has to be followed by Manana. Manana has to be followed by Nididhyasana. And then I am giving one clue. UNESCO has brought out 2 educational reports during last century. One in 1972 and another one in 1996. And 1996 educational report was the last report. Chairman was Jack Doyle. Only there was one Indian member in his 13 member committee. One Indian member, and he was Dr. Karan Singh. Dr. Karan Singh is a doctorate on Sri Aurobindo's nationalism. So, in that report, Jack Taylor has formulated 4 pillars of education. First one is to know, about the science of learning. And he has said about the science of learning that science of learning is nothing but learning how to concentrate. And Vivekananda, if you summarize Vivekananda's whole educational philosophy, you can summarize it in 6 terms. 3C, 3S. 3S is science, spirituality, service. And 3C is character, culture, concentration. Now UNESCO has admitted. And the title of the report, you will be surprised. It is just the echoing of India's 1,000 years old utterance that learning requires our guru. Just now UNESCO has reported in 1996 kept saying, this is commercial age. We have three supermen guiding us from behind. The opulent plutocrat, the successful mammoth capitalist, and the organizer of industries. This is thus we envy. Rather, if we accept the Zexeller's report, it will be, I think, in my humble opinion, it will be more Indian. And Vivekananda once saying, if I get any chance to study again, this time I will not study subject. This time only I will only learn how to concentrate, and after that, with the power of concentration, I will learn any subject at my will. Just you can, I am not boasting myself and saying, I was a student of accountancy. I was regular transport officer. But accountancy and transport is not part of my life now. I was taught accountancy in my college by my estate teacher. So it is concentration, it is aspiration. And then politics, Maharshi has said about 4 A's. In for success in any case, he has said about 4 things in his synthesis of yoga. Actually, it is a verse from Mahotsav. He has made it a long chapter, the 4 A's, so I should start. But success in any field, whether economics, whether politics, whether yoga, whether education, whether culture, whether dance, art, music, in any form, and it is actually a verse from Mahotsav. 4 things we need. One is Shastra, but the eternal Shastra is within our heart. Then the Guru, again the eternal Guru is within our heart. And third one is Utsaha. This is the primary thing. Utsaha of the student. And the fourth one is Allah. We don't have control over Allah. So Allah will act as per his own wills. But the Utsaha of the student, that is the Quran.
Thank you very much, sir.
Like to say धन्यवाद. Namaskar, Vande Bharat Mataram. In praise of Yogi Aurobindo, I would like to say यज्ञज्योति समाक्षात्र, यज्ञज्योति समाक्षात्र, ज्ञान वैराग्य सूचक, तेज समृद्धि संकेत, अरविंदायते नमः. अत्यंत का हर्ष का विषय है कि आज हमारे मध्य 2 महानुभावों ने अपने विचार रखे, उनका सानिध्य हमें प्राप्त हुआ. श्री अरविंदो के जीवन, उनकी शिक्षा आदि विषयों के विचार हमें सुनने को मिले, जानने का अवसर प्राप्त हुआ, बहुत कुछ हमने सीखा. एक तेजस्वी क्रांति सूर्य श्री अरविंद की यह सार्धशती है, 150th बर्थ एनिवर्सरी, और इसके लिए यह विषय और भी महत्वपूर्ण हो जाता है. It's very important to have the discourse on a topic like how the Aurobindo's life was and what and all his philosophy about education. राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति के संबंध में हर जगह मंथन शुरू है. We have been discussing about what and all should be the education for Bharat to become Vishwa Guru. In this context also the today's topic is very relevant. मैं श्री अनिल गोकक जी का आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ कि उन्होंने हमारा निमंत्रण स्वीकार किया और आज के कार्यक्रम की विशेष अतिथि का पदभार संभाला. आपने जब अरविंदो के विचार रखे, उन विचारों में अरविंदो जी ने जो जेल में, प्रिजन में जो एक्सपीरियंस किया, उसको अगर समेटना है तो मैं 3 बातों में इसको समेटना चाहूंगी कि अरविंदो ने रियलाइज किया मैं कौन हूं. द सेकेंड थिंग ही रियलाइज इज एकम सत विप्रा बहुधा वदंती. हम सब एक है और हर कोई अलग अलग नामों से उसे जानता है. एंड थर्ड थिंग अमंग द प्रिजनर ही ऑब्जर्व वाज अबाउट आध्यात्मिक सात्विक टेम्परामेंट. So these are the three things in absurd situation when a person is under prison. How to encash the samaya, I should say, and learn many things from these things. So it was really a enlightening session from your side, sir. Thank you very much. धन्यवाद. मैं कृतज्ञता व्यक्त करती हूँ कि श्री दिगंत शर्मा जी इन्होंने मिशन मोड में श्री अरविंदो के शैक्षणिक विचार समाज में देने का जो संकल्प किया है. आपसे ऐसे अनेक ज्ञान मोती भविष्य में भी हमें प्राप्त होंगे ऐसी आशा करते हैं. आपने कहा ट्रांसपोर्टेशन विभाग में मैं था, अभी उसका कोई लेना देना नहीं, परंतु जिस तरह से मिशन मोड में ये विषय लेकर के समाज में आप जा रहे हैं तो यू आर ट्रांसपोर्टिंग द विषय और विचार ऑफ अरविंदो जी टू द सोसाइटी. To sum up with Aurobindo's principle on education, nothing can be taught. Mind has to be consulted. To walk from near to far, education should be national. Focus to building faculties of knowledge is very important. Ethical and aesthetical nature to be developed that you quoted as Satyam Shivam Sundaram. We cannot stop on the border of humanity, but we have to realize the divinity within. We have to move beyond the intellect, just intellect, and realize the supreme power. The growth of consciousness has to be the aim of education. So आपके विचार हर तरह से हमारे लिए प्रेरणादायी रहे. आपके लिए हम कृतज्ञता व्यक्त करते हैं. हम आपके रूम में रहना चाहते हैं ताकि आगे चलकर भी आपके विचार हमें सुनने को मिले. कोई भी अच्छा काम हो, कार्यक्रम हो, प्रेरणा के बिना वो संभव नहीं होता. और हम सबकी प्रेरणा स्रोत है हमारे आत्मीय निदेशक महोदय श्री एस शर्मा जी, जो हमेशा हमारे साथ खड़े रहते हैं और हम बहुत भाग्यशाली है कि हम उनके साथ काम करते हैं. तो हमारे निदेशक महोदय जो अत्यंत व्यस्तता के कारण आज अनुपस्थित रहे, मैं उनका भी धन्यवाद देती हूँ. हमारे बीच हमेशा हमारे लिए प्रेरणा स्रोत रहते हैं हमारे श्याम सुंदर जी. और अनिल जी का आखिरी शब्द जो था कि हमें श्याम सुंदर बनना है, तो उनके स्वागत पर भाषण से एक जिसे बोलते सेटिंग द टोन ऑफ द सेमिनार जो हो पाया, उसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत आभार सर. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. NAAC के समस्त अधिकारी, कर्मचारी, प्रशासनिक विभाग, वित्तीय विभाग एवं हमारी ICT टीम, इनका साथ हमारे साथ सर हमेशा बना रहता है, यह यहाँ पर उल्लेखनीय है. यह कार्यक्रम NAAC के वेबसाइट से लाइव स्ट्रीम हो रहा है, तो कई सारे हमारे साथी ऑनलाइन आभासी माध्यम से जुड़े हैं. उनका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करती हूँ. आज के कार्यक्रम के संयोजक माननीय प्रशांत बराड़ जी, उपसलाहकार NAAC एवं उनकी चमू कामले सर और अन्य सभी लोग, विश्वामित्री और सब लोग, इन्होंने बहुत अच्छा आयोजन इस कार्यक्रम का किया. उनका मैं अभिनंदन करती हूँ. अरविंदो के जीवन को अगर देखना है तो कुछ पंक्तियां, कविता की पंक्तियां या उद्धृत करना चाहूंगी कि जीवन का बस ध्येय समर्पण, तन मन का एक केंद्र बिंदु हो. जीवन का बस ध्येय समर्पण, माँ तुमसे बस एक प्रार्थना, व्यर्थ न जाए दिव्य साधना. श्वेत नहीं यह रक्त बहाकर हमने की है तेरी अर्चना. पुष्प सुविकसित इन चरणों में माता का पूजन अर्चन हो. जीवन का बस ध्येय समर्पण, तन मन का एक केंद्र बिंदु हो. ऐसा ध्येयपूर्ण जीवन जीने वाले भारत माता के चिरंजीव पुत्र श्री अरविंदो, इनके चरणों में श्रद्धा सुमन अर्पित करती हूँ और अपनी बात को विराम देती हूँ. धन्यवाद. नमस्कार.
Thank you very very much, Madam, for very comprehensive lot of thanks. Now I will request all to raise for the occasion for the national anthem.